Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction inspired by urban legends and reported paranormal experiences. Any resemblance to actual people, places, or events is purely coincidental. It is intended for entertainment purposes only. Reader discretion is advised, especially for those sensitive to horror themes. It started like most reckless ideas do, on a lazy Friday night with too much time and too little responsibility. Jake, Mia, Brandon, and Chris had been friends since high school. Now in their mid-20s, they were finally free of college, jobs were stable enough, and a road trip across the U.S. felt like the perfect way to relive their youth before real adulthood hit them like a brick wall. They'd already planned most of the route, major landmarks, quirky roadside attractions, and a few camping spots. But during a gas station stop in Pennsylvania, Brandon brought up a name that made everyone pause: Clinton Road. "You guys ever heard of it?" he asked, leaning against the hood of the van, phone in hand. "It's supposed to be the most haunted road in America. Like, legit cursed." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What, like ghost sightings and creepy woods?" "No, dude, worse. There's this story about a kid ghost that throws coins back at you. A phantom truck that chases people. People disappearing. Time loops. All kinds of freaky stuff." Mia rolled her eyes but laughed nervously. "Sounds like clickbait to me." "Exactly," Brandon grinned. "And we're driving right through New Jersey anyway. We should check it out." Chris, the quiet one of the group, didn't say anything at first. He stared off into the dark horizon, his expression unreadable. Jake laughed and slapped Brandon's back. "You just want ghost footage for your YouTube channel." Brandon grinned. "If we catch anything creepy, it'll go viral." After a few minutes of debate and mock-scary voices, the decision was made. They would take a detour off their route and drive down Clinton Road at night. Just for the thrill. Just for the story. They didn't take it seriously. Not yet. That night, they found a cheap motel nearby and stayed up reading about Clinton Road online. The legends were extensive. Satanic rituals in the woods, ghostly children near a bridge, mysterious lights, strange creatures, and most famously, a phantom truck that chases intruders away. Chris finally spoke up as the others scrolled through creepy Reddit posts. "You guys know that some people never came back from that road, right?" Everyone went quiet. "Urban legend," Jake muttered, brushing it off. Chris looked at him. "Not everything gets posted online." There was a moment of unease, but Brandon broke it with a laugh. "Well, guess we'll find out tomorrow night. We'll record everything. If we disappear, at least we'll be famous." They all laughed, even Mia, though something in her smile was strained. The next morning, the road trip continued. The scenery changed from cityscapes to thick, unbroken woods as they crossed into rural New Jersey. A cold wind seemed to follow them, and the clouds hung low like a warning. By late afternoon, they reached a small diner not far from the turnoff to Clinton Road. Inside, the lights flickered, and a jukebox in the corner played old country music no one had selected. The group sat in a booth, ordering greasy burgers and milkshakes. That's when the old man approached. He had a limp, wore a faded flannel shirt, and his eyes were sharp as knives. "You kids heading to Clinton Road?" he asked, his voice dry like dead leaves. They glanced at each other. "Yeah, how do you know?" Brandon said almost proudly. The man didn't smile. "Turn around and go the other way." Chris stiffened. The others chuckled nervously. "You think it's a joke? That road don't play with you, it keeps you." Jake leaned forward. "Have you seen something there?" The man didn't answer right away. He just stared at them like he was looking through them into a future he didn't want to see. "I've heard screams come from that road with no mouths to make them," he said quietly. "People vanish. Time bends. If you see the truck, don't stop. If you hear your name in the woods, don't answer." With that, he walked away, leaving the four friends silent. Brandon tried to laugh it off again, but this time no one laughed with him. As the sun dipped behind the trees and dusk painted the sky blood red, they knew one thing: they were no longer just on a road trip. They were heading into something they didn't understand. Something watching. Something waiting. By the time they left the diner, the sky had turned a sickly shade of purple, thick clouds hanging like bruises above the forest. The road twisted tighter with every mile, and trees pressed closer to the edge of the pavement. The laughter and excitement from earlier were gone, replaced by an unspoken heaviness that settled over the van like a fog. The old man's warning echoed in all their minds, but no one brought it up again. Maybe because doing so would make it feel real. Chris sat in the back seat with Mia, staring out the window. "You guys really believe what he said?" Mia finally asked, trying to sound casual. Jake, driving, shrugged. Old people always have ghost stories. Half of it is probably stuff he made up to scare tourists. Brandon, riding shotgun and still scrolling his phone, chimed in. I mean, this place is famous. There's a ton of stories, like hundreds of them. Some people say there's a druidic temple hidden in the woods. Others say satanic cults used to perform rituals out there. Chris's voice was quiet. Some say they still do. Everyone turned to look at him. He didn't elaborate. Brandon looked down at his screen again and read aloud, here's one. If you drive past midnight, a black pickup truck will follow you, flashing its lights and trying to run you off the road. But when you stop, there's no truck behind you. Another one says that if you drop a coin off a certain bridge, a ghost child returns it to you. Mia crossed her arms. That's the kind of thing people make up to feel something. Attention. Thrill. It's like an adrenaline addiction. Or maybe they're trying to warn us, Chris muttered. They passed a rusted, bullet-riddled sign that read Clinton Road, 1 mile. Trees now arched overhead, forming a tunnel of dark green that blocked out the last light of day. Jake tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Whatever happens, it's just a road. We drive through, we film a few creepy shots, and we move on. No ghosts, no demons. Just shadows and stories. Still, as the tires crossed onto Clinton Road, even he didn't sound convinced. It was immediately quieter, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. No birds. No insects. Just the hum of their engine and the occasional creak of tree branches swaying in the breeze. The road was cracked and uneven, lined with old wooden guardrails half swallowed by vines. The deeper they drove, the weirder things got. They passed a single shoe in the middle of the road. No sign of a person. Just one weathered, mud-streaked sneaker. A little farther on, they saw a faded white cross nailed to a tree, wilted flowers at its base. Then another. And another. This feels wrong, Mia whispered. It's just roadside memorials, Brandon said quickly, but even he was sitting straighter now, the lightness gone from his tone. They approached a narrow curve that twisted sharply to the right, bordered by a crumbling stone wall. Dead Man's Curve, Jake said, recalling something he'd read earlier. A lot of fatal accidents happened right here. Suddenly, their headlights caught something, movement in the trees. A person? No. Gone too fast. Jake hit the brakes and the van jerked to a stop. What the hell was that? Mia asked, voice shaking. I don't know. I saw something, Jake muttered. They waited, staring into the darkness between the trees. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. Then the van's headlights flickered, just for a moment. Chris leaned forward, eyes wide. This road isn't normal. They kept driving. Half a mile later, the road widened slightly and curved alongside a still, black river. An old, weathered bridge crossed over it. Faint graffiti covered the concrete sides, faded words and names and crude drawings. Brandon pointed. That's it, he said. Ghost Boy Bridge. Jake slowed the van to a stop in the middle of the bridge. What now? We toss a coin. Brandon fished a penny from the cup holder and leaned out the window. Here goes nothing. He flicked the coin over the edge. They waited. Nothing. See? He said with a nervous laugh. Just STO? A small ping sounded in the van. They all turned. The coin was on the dashboard. None of them had moved. No one said a word. Then the radio crackled. Static. Then a faint whisper. Turn back. Chris looked like he couldn't breathe. Jake shifted the van into drive, his voice shaking. We're not even halfway through the road. Brandon slowly reached for his camera and hit record. They all knew it now. This wasn't just a thrill-seeking dare anymore. They had entered a place that didn't want to be found. And it definitely didn't want them to leave. The van rolled forward slowly, headlights cutting through the growing mist that clung low to the cracked asphalt. Trees leaned closer now, their gnarled branches clawing into the road as if trying to pull it back into the forest. The deeper they drove into Clinton Road, the more it felt like time and space were unraveling. Brandon's camera was rolling, the red light glowing dimly in the dark. He spoke into it, his voice hushed. We're officially on Clinton Road, and weird things are already happening. Coin came back to the dashboard. Radio whispered something. This is not a joke. Mia sat rigid in her seat, arms crossed tightly over her chest. She hadn't said a word since the bridge. Chris stared out his window, face pale, watching the shadows flit between the trees. Jake gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white, refusing to admit he was just as scared as the rest of them. Do you guys feel that? Chris asked suddenly. Feel what? Jake said. Chris hesitated. It's like pressure. Like the air is getting heavier. Brandon nodded. Yeah, like something's watching us. They drove for another mile in silence. There were no houses, no lights, no signs of life, just endless woods. At one point, Jake slowed the van, squinting through the windshield. Is that a person? Up ahead, standing on the side of the road, was a boy, maybe 10 years old. He wore a torn hoodie, his jeans soaked and muddy. His skin was pale, almost gray in the headlights. He didn't move, just stared at them with hollow, unblinking eyes. Mia gasped. Oh my God, stop. We have to help him. Jake slowed, unsure. But what if the boy vanished? No movement. No running. Just gone. Chris shouted, where did he go? Jake slammed the brakes. They all jumped out of the van with flashlights, sweeping them across the trees and underbrush. Nothing. No footprints. No sign anyone had been there. Brandon replayed the video he had just recorded. The boy was there, but when the lights hit him, the image glitched. Distorted. The frame skipped and then he disappeared from the footage entirely. I don't like this, Mia said, voice trembling. They got back in the van, locking the doors. The radio, which had gone quiet since the whisper earlier, suddenly crackled to life again. But instead of music or static, it played a strange humming noise, almost like chanting. Jake shut it off. Brandon muttered, this place is messing with us. As they continued driving, they saw more signs that something was deeply wrong. A deer stood in the middle of the road, but it didn't move. Its eyes glowed, not from the headlights, but from within. It turned its head in slow, unnatural motion, watching them as they passed. Something's not right with the animals, Chris said. Something's not right with anything, Mia snapped. We need to turn around. Jake shook his head. We're already halfway through. Turning back won't help. We just need to finish the road. But the road felt longer now. Twisted. As if it was stretching the farther they went. They passed a burned-out car, rusted and half-sunken into the ditch. Vines had grown over it, and the inside was empty, except for a child's shoe on the passenger seat. The trees closed in tighter, and the fog thickened. Then, from behind, they heard it. A low rumble. Headlights in the rearview mirror. A truck. A massive black pickup was coming fast, no license plate, no driver visible. Jake muttered, no way. The truck surged closer, headlights flashing violently. It blared its horn. A deep, mechanical roar that shook the van's windows. Drive! Mia screamed. Jake hit the gas. The van lurched forward, tires squealing. The truck followed, swerving, blinding them with high beams. Chris looked behind them. It's right on us. It's trying to hit us. They raced down the road, trees whipping past on either side. Jake tried to outrun it, but the truck stayed on their tail impossibly fast. At one point, it vanished into the fog behind them, only to reappear ahead. What the hell? How did it? Jake swerved violently, avoiding a collision, heart pounding. The truck vanished again, no sound, no screeching tires, just gone. Everyone sat in stunned silence, breathing hard. The van began to stall. The engine sputtered, the dashboard lights flickering. Jake fought the wheel. No, no, no. Don't die on me now. The van stopped. Completely. Everything went dark. No headlights. No dashboard. No engine. Only silence. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows like a living thing. From the trees, something moved. Something stepped closer. They weren't alone. And the road was just beginning. The silence was absolute. Inside the van, no one moved. The darkness outside was so thick it felt solid, like a blanket had been thrown over the world. Their breaths came fast and shallow. Even the crickets had stopped. The only sound was the blood pounding in their ears. Why did the engine die? Mia whispered. Jake didn't answer. He just turned the key again. Nothing. Not even a click. Chris leaned forward, his face ghostly in the faint glow of Brandon's camera. It's the road. It doesn't want us to leave. Don't say that, Mia snapped, voice cracking. Brandon aimed his lens toward the windshield, trying to record whatever was happening. The fog had wrapped around the van like smoke, swirling unnaturally, moving in waves rather than drifting. It wasn't random, it was alive. Then a soft thud. Something had landed on the roof. Everyone froze. Jake whispered, "Did you hear that?" Before anyone could answer, a scraping noise followed, the sound of claws dragging across metal. Slow. Deliberate. Chris reached for the flashlight. No. No one get out? Brandon pointed his camera at the ceiling. What if it's an animal? Mia shook her head. No animal makes that sound. Then another thud. This time on the side of the van. The back window fogged up and a small handprint appeared, child-sized but distorted, the fingers too long, the palm too narrow. It smeared slowly down the glass as if something was sliding down it from the roof. Mia screamed. Jake jumped, fumbling to turn the key again. The van still wouldn't start. Chris stared at the handprint. We need to get out of here. We need to move now. Brandon turned off the camera light to avoid drawing more attention. The van plunged into deeper darkness. That's when they saw it. Outside the passenger window, standing just within the fog, was a figure. Tall, thin, covered in shadows. It didn't move. It didn't blink. Its head was tilted slightly, as if studying them. Then came the whisper, clear and unmistakable. Mia? Her head snapped toward the voice. Came from the woods. Mia, help me? It sounded like her mother's voice. No, she whispered. No, that's not real. She covered her ears. My mom's not here. She's not here. Mia, please. I'm cold. She screamed again, this time in rage. Stop it. You're not her. The whisper turned into laughter, cruel, echoing, inhuman. Brandon, panicked, yanked the sliding door open and jumped out. Brandon, wait! Jake shouted. But he was already outside, spinning around with his flashlight. It's just fog. It's just fog. The moment his feet hit the ground, the sound stopped. No laughter. No voices. Only stillness. He turned the flashlight toward the woods. The beam lit up dozens of faces. Not real ones, carved ones. Dozens of wooden figures hanging from trees by string. All with hollow eyes and stitched mouths. Each one swayed gently, though there was no wind. Brandon backed away slowly. What the hell is this? One of the wooden dolls dropped from a tree and landed in front of him. He crouched to pick it up. It had his face. His exact features burned into the wood. The eyes gouged out. Brandon dropped it, stumbling backward. We need to leave. Now. He ran back to the van, breath coming in sharp gasps. Something's playing with us. It knows us. It's inside our heads. Jake tried the engine again. Click. The lights flickered. Click. Vroom. The engine roared to life. Yes. Jake yelled. Get in, Brandon. Brandon jumped into the van and slammed the door shut just as something slammed against the back. The entire van rocked. Mia screamed. Jake floored it, tires spinning in the gravel. They sped down the winding road. Branches slapped the windows and the fog began to break apart as they moved faster. A light appeared in the distance, a faded, rusted road sign, leaving Clinton Road, 1 mile. But just as they reached it, the truck returned. It burst through the woods behind them, headlights blazing, horn screaming. Jake gritted his teeth. Hold on. The truck surged forward. Then, just as suddenly, it vanished again. No sound. No lights. No truck. They crossed the sign. Everything went still. No more fog. No more whispers. Just silence. Jake pulled the van over, chest heaving. No one spoke. Brandon looked at the dashboard camera. It was still recording. He turned it toward his face, whispering, we made it out. But something followed us. Chris turned slowly. From the back window, another handprint was forming. Fresh. They had escaped the road, but the road hadn't let go. They didn't speak much on the way back to the motel. The van rolled along the highway in silence, the world outside suddenly too bright, too normal, as if what had happened was just a shared nightmare. But the tension inside the vehicle was suffocating. No one dared to say it aloud, but they all knew something wasn't right with Brandon. He hadn't spoken since they left Clinton Road. He just sat there in the back seat, clutching the camera to his chest, staring blankly out the window. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, almost wrong. Mia leaned closer to Chris and whispered, do you think he's okay? Chris shook his head slowly. I don't know. He hasn't blinked in like 10 minutes. Jake glanced at Brandon through the rearview mirror. He's probably in shock. They checked into a cheap motel just off the highway, a worn-out place called Red Pines Inn. The clerk barely looked up as they were handed a single key and directed to room 207. Inside, it was cramped, 2 double beds, stained wallpaper, and a flickering fluorescent light that buzzed like an angry wasp. The air smelled faintly of mildew and cigarette smoke. Brandon sat on the edge of the bed without removing his shoes. He hadn't put the camera down once. Jake pulled out his phone. We need to upload the footage. People need to see this. Maybe someone knows what's going on. Chris nodded, but Mia hesitated. I'm not sure that's a good idea. What if sharing it spreads something? Jake raised an eyebrow. You're seriously saying the footage is cursed? I don't know, she said quietly. But everything we experienced, it wasn't just physical. It knew us. It used my mother's voice. It made a doll with Brandon's face. Whatever that thing was, it plays with your mind. Chris added, maybe uploading it just invites it into more people's lives. Jake didn't answer, but he didn't upload the footage either. That night, while the others tried to sleep, Brandon sat in the corner of the room. The TV played an old sitcom on mute, casting flickering colors across the walls. Brandon stared into the static of the screen, lips moving silently. Mia stirred. Brandon? He didn't respond. She got up and walked over to him. Hey, you okay? He slowly turned toward her. His eyes were bloodshot. Do you hear it? Mia paused. Hear what? The whispering, he said, tilting his head. It's still calling me. It never stopped. Chris sat up in bed. What do you mean? Brandon gripped the camera tightly. When I picked up the doll, something entered me. I think it marked me. Like a tether. Jake stood now too. You're freaking us out, man. I'm not trying to, Brandon whispered. But I don't think I ever left that road. Suddenly, the TV went black. Then it turned to static. From the speaker, a voice crackled faintly. Brandon. Mia backed away. Turn it off. Chris rushed over and yanked the plug from the wall. But the TV stayed on. The static grew louder. Then a face appeared. Not fully formed, just flashes. A stretched mouth. Black holes for eyes. Flickering between frames. Moving in unnatural, twitching jerks. The whisper came again, louder. Let us in. The lights flickered and the bathroom door slammed shut on its own. Jake grabbed the camera from Brandon's hands and flung it against the wall. The static stopped. The TV went dead. Silence. Brandon screamed. He collapsed to the floor, writhing in pain, clutching his head. It's in me. It's in my head. Chris and Jake held him down while Mia scrambled for water, not knowing what else to do. Then, just as suddenly, Brandon went still. His eyes rolled back and he passed out. They laid him on the bed, all of them shaking. Jake whispered, we need help. Chris looked toward the shattered remains of the camera. No one's going to believe us. Mia, now crying, said, this isn't over. We brought something back. Outside the motel window, the streetlights began to flicker one by one. In the distance, faint and far away, a horn blared. Long, deep. Familiar. The truck. It had found them again. The night was far from over. The motel room felt colder now. Not the kind of cold that came from a faulty heater, but something deeper, unnatural. The kind of cold that slipped beneath your skin and settled in your bones. The lights continued to flicker, shadows growing darker between the pulses. Chris stood near the window, staring out into the parking lot. There's no one out there. Jake joined him. What about the horn? Chris shook his head. Could have been in our heads. Mia snapped, then explained the TV, the whispering, the face. You think we all imagined that at the same time? In the corner, Brandon groaned. He hadn't fully regained consciousness, but he twitched in his sleep like he was trapped in a nightmare. Sweat soaked through his shirt and he kept muttering something under his breath. Jake leaned closer. What's he saying? Chris listened carefully. It sounds like the road never ends. Suddenly, the door rattled. Once. Twice. Then violently. They all turned toward it. The chain lock trembled as if someone or something was yanking from the other side. Jake whispered, no one open it. Chris crept forward, grabbing a lamp as a makeshift weapon. He placed his eye to the peephole, then stumbled back with a cry. What? What did you see? Mia asked, terrified. Chris could barely speak. It was me. Mia's voice quivered. You saw yourself? He nodded. It looked just like me. Same jacket, same face, but the eyes, they were completely black. The door went still. No more shaking. No footsteps. Just silence. Jake whispered, we need to get out of here. Now. He opened the nightstand drawer, hoping to find something, anything useful. Instead, he pulled out a motel Bible. But when he opened it, the pages were blank. Every single one. Just white, untouched paper. Suddenly, a low growl came from the bathroom. Mia stepped back. Oh no. No. The growl turned into a wet, ragged breathing sound. Then the doorknob began to turn slowly. Deliberately. Chris shouted, something's coming through. Jake grabbed Brandon by the arms and started dragging him toward the door. We're getting out of here, now. The bathroom door burst open. Something stumbled out. But it wasn't a person. It was a shape. Human-like but warped, hunched over with elongated limbs and skin that looked burned and cracked. Its face was a blur, constantly shifting features like a bad signal on a television screen. It let out a high-pitched screech that made their ears ring and their vision blur. Mia screamed. Jake kicked open the front door and hauled Brandon outside, followed by Chris and Mia. They ran down the motel hallway, the flickering lights above them casting strobe-like images of shadows that didn't match their movements. Behind them, the thing followed, limping, crawling, dragging itself on all fours. As it moved, it whispered their names. Jake? Chris? Mia. They reached the parking lot. Jake's keys fumbled in his hands as he unlocked the van. But the van was different now. Its windshield was shattered from the inside. The same wooden dolls they'd seen in the woods were hanging from the rearview mirror. Every seat had a handprint on it. Chris shouted, "Forget it. Just run." They took off down the road behind the motel, breath ragged, feet pounding the pavement. But the world had changed. The sky overhead was no longer night, it was a reddish hue, like dusk and dawn twisted together. The motel behind them was gone, swallowed by trees that hadn't been there a moment ago. Mia stopped running. Wait. This can't be real. Chris looked around. We're back in the woods. Jake turned in a slow circle. No, we left Clinton Road. We left. Brandon suddenly opened his eyes. His voice was cold. Flat. Empty. You never left. The trees shifted. The fog returned. And far ahead, just barely visible in the distance, stood the bridge. The same bridge. The starting point. They were back. The realization hit them like a punch to the chest. They had returned to Clinton Road. Somehow, impossibly, they were back where they started. The bridge loomed ahead exactly as it had before, rusted guardrails, crumbling concrete, the stagnant water below reflecting no light. Jake stumbled backward. No, this isn't possible. We drove away. We escaped. No one escapes this road, Brandon said, voice hollow. Mia turned to him. Brandon, stop. You're scaring us. He didn't blink. You should be scared. This road doesn't let people go. It just waits for them to bring it others. Chris narrowed his eyes. What do you mean? Brandon finally looked at them, and for a moment his face wasn't his. It shimmered, like a veil slipping, revealing something ancient underneath. The road is alive, he said. It feeds on fear, memories, guilt. It shows you what hurts most, and uses it to pull you deeper. He turned his gaze toward Mia. Your mother never called you. That was the road, and you believed it. Mia shook her head, stepping back. No, that wasn't real. It was real enough, Brandon replied. That's all it needs. Jake growled. Okay, enough. If you're trying to freak us out, you've done it. Let's find another way out. Chris stepped between them. Wait, if Brandon's right, maybe we need to understand why it brought us back. Jake scoffed. Who cares why? Let's just find the highway again. But Brandon wasn't done. This place was cursed long before roads even existed. Long before settlers came. It was a place where things crossed over, things that don't belong in our world. Clinton Road was built through it, not over it. And that bridge, he pointed, is the anchor. Chris blinked. The anchor. Brandon nodded. It's the center of the loop. That's why everything begins and ends here. The ghost stories, the truck, the whispers, they're bait. Distractions. The real power is beneath the bridge. Mia whispered. So what do we do? Burn it? No, Brandon said. Someone has to break the cycle. Someone has to go in willingly. Jake stepped forward. No way. You're not seriously suggesting one of us sacrifices ourselves. Brandon didn't answer. Instead, he walked to the edge of the bridge and knelt beside the guardrail. He placed a hand on the cracked concrete. It's already chosen. What do you mean? Chris asked. Brandon turned and looked at them one last time. It chose me when I picked up the doll. Jake moved toward him. Brandon, wait, don't do this. But Brandon just smiled, a strange, tired smile. Maybe this will end it. Maybe it won't. But if I don't try, it'll keep pulling us back. Again. And again. Without another word, he stood, took a breath and jumped. Mia screamed. Chris ran to the edge and looked down. But the water was gone. Where there should have been a shallow creek, there was only darkness, a pit, deep and infinite, swallowing light. And Brandon was gone. No splash. No echo. Nothing. Jake backed away. Oh God. Oh my God, but as they stood there in stunned silence, something began to shift. The trees around them started to shimmer, fading like smoke. The unnatural red sky slowly turned back to black. The fog began to lift, And from somewhere beyond the woods, the sound of cars, real cars, echoed faintly. A highway. Chris whispered, "Did it work?" "I don't know," Mia said. "But something's changed." They turned and walked cautiously back toward the road. There, at the edge of the trees, was the van. Untouched. Clean. As if none of it had happened. Jake opened the door slowly. "We should go. Now." As they pulled back onto the main road, they passed the old, rusted sign, Clinton Road, "Enter at your own risk." Only this time, the paint had faded so badly, the words were barely visible. Almost like the road itself was fading too. Mia looked out the window. "Do you think Brandon's gone?" Chris didn't answer right away. "I think part of him stayed behind. Maybe that's what the road wanted. A trade." They drove in silence, the lights of civilization growing brighter in the distance. But in the rearview mirror, Jake thought he saw something. A figure standing on the bridge. Watching. Waiting. It had been 3 weeks since they escaped Clinton Road. 3 weeks since Brandon jumped into that impossible darkness beneath the bridge. Since the world bent around them and reality snapped back into place as if nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Chris, Mia, and Jake hadn't spoken much in those 3 weeks. They kept in touch through scattered texts, the occasional phone call, but something about speaking openly, recounting it all, felt dangerous. Like mentioning Brandon's name too many times would summon something back from that place. Jake had moved back in with his parents, quit YouTube entirely, and deleted the footage they had recorded. Chris changed his phone number. Mia stopped sleeping altogether. But none of it stopped the nightmares. Each of them dreamed of Clinton Road in different ways. Chris would wake up sweating, hearing the horn of that phantom truck outside his window, though no one else ever heard it. Jake dreamt of his own reflection whispering secrets through the bathroom mirror. And Mia, she saw Brandon. Every single night. In her dreams, he stood at the edge of the bridge. Watching her. Saying nothing. Just waiting. Until one night, he finally spoke. "It's not over." She woke up screaming. The next day, she called Chris and Jake. They met at a small diner miles away from their town, neutral ground. "We need to talk," she said quietly as they sat in the booth. Chris looked tired, older. "About Brandon?" She nodded. "He came to me. In my dream. But it felt different. Real." Jake stirred his coffee. "I dreamed of him too. He was trying to say something. I couldn't make it out." Chris leaned in. "What if he's trapped?" They sat in silence, the question hanging between them like smoke. Mia reached into her bag and pulled out a small USB drive. "I lied," she said. "I didn't delete everything." Jake blinked. "What?" "I couldn't. Something told me I might need it one day. I backed up one of the camera files. Just one clip." Chris hesitated. "What's on it?" Mia looked them in the eyes. "Brandon. Right before he changed." Back at Chris's apartment, they plugged the USB into his laptop and watched. The screen flickered to life. Brandon was sitting in the back of the van right after they had escaped the forest. He was holding the camera, talking to himself, though he hadn't said a word aloud that night. On screen, his voice was strained, afraid. "If you're watching this, I don't think I'm gonna make it. Something is inside me. I can feel it pushing. Like it's wearing me like a mask." He glanced toward the lens. Clinton Road isn't just haunted. It's a trap. A loop. A feeding ground. It shows you what you fear most and makes you live it again and again. Every story you've heard? The ghost boy, the truck, the figures in the woods, it's all part of the same thing. One entity. It lures you in with folklore, but once you enter, it learns you. He paused. And the only way out is to give it something in return. The video glitched for a second. The screen scrambled and a high-pitched sound pierced the speakers. Then Brandon's face warped, his eyes went dark, his mouth split into a grotesque grin. The screen went black. Chris slammed the laptop shut. Jake stood up. "Nope. I'm done. I can't." The lights flickered. Then the radio on the counter turned on. Static. Then a voice. "Jake." All three of them froze. Chris whispered, "It followed us." Mia looked pale. "We thought leaving the road was enough. But it marked us. We're part of the loop now." The air grew cold. The laptop powered on by itself. The video started again, but it wasn't Brandon anymore. It was the bridge. And something underneath it, slithering in the dark. Mia stared at the screen, trembling. "This is a message. From him. He's telling us the road doesn't just take you. It remembers you." On the screen, words flickered in white letters, "Don't go back." Jake whispered, "Then what do we do?" Chris stared into the darkened window. "We make sure no one else ever goes near it." Epilogue: a year later, Clinton Road was shut down by the state. The official reason? Erosion. Unsafe conditions. Road collapse. But those who lived nearby knew the truth. Stories continued to spread, though fewer dared to visit. The sign rusted completely and was finally torn down. Still, sometimes late at night, truckers claimed to hear a horn blaring in the woods. Others said they saw a young man standing on the bridge, waiting. And if you ever find yourself near a quiet, unmarked road in the New Jersey forest, keep driving and don't look back. 36.